Congratulations, everyone! We have a new disorder in this world we can get diagnosed with. Woo! Yeah! New disorder! We have problems! Woo! Gaming disorder is defined in the draft 11th revision of the International Classification of Diseases as a pattern of gaming behavior, and I love this in quotations, digital gaming or video gaming. Hey Tommy, you want to come over to my house so we can do some video gaming? Heck yeah, Christopher. Maybe after that we can do some homeworking and some dinnering when we get hungry. You don't need to call it video gaming, World Health Organization. It's just gaming. Drop the video. It's not sexy. Gamer boys, gamer girls, game. There's gaming, not video gaming. Characterized by impaired control over gaming, increasing priority given to gaming over other activities to the extent that gaming takes precedence over other interests and daily activities, like going to college, and continuation or escalation of gaming despite the occurrence of negative consequences, like not getting a degree, For gaming disorder to be diagnosed, the behavior pattern must be of sufficient severity to result in significant impairment of personal, family, social, educational, occupational, or other important areas of functioning and would normally have been evident for at least 12 months. If I'm remembering correctly, Fortnite came out last September, so I'm guessing we're going to have a lot of diagnoses. Diagnoses? Diagnostics? We're going to find out there's a lot of sick people in this world come September 2018, so hug your loved ones. They may never be the same again in the fall. One of the worst things about this disorder is how accepted it is and how common it is. I mean, there's an entire website dedicated to the victims and the perpetrators of this disorder. Could you imagine if there was a meth.tv where people just watched each other smoke meth and gave each other money to buy meth and eat their turds and do whatever people who smoke meth do? I mean, look at this poor guy sitting there, suffering, crying out for help, and none of us are listening.
It's sad to see you like this, bro.
Denial. It's not just a river in Egypt. Alright, so I've been making light of the fact that gaming disorder has been added to the International Classification of Diseases. When this news first broke on Twitter, I made a joke about it, as did a lot of people, and in recent days there's been pushback from some other gaming personalities saying to go to the World Health Organization website, read through what gaming disorder entails, and you'll realize it's not a joke. People can be affected by this, and it's not as wide a variety of the population as you would think could be affected by it. So at the end of this video, I just wanted to give my own opinions on gaming disorder being added to the International Classification of Diseases, my thoughts on it based on some articles I've read, which I will link in the description below if you guys feel like reading, but if you're on YouTube, you probably don't. What does it mean when something is added to the International Classification of Diseases anyway? And what are the positives and negatives of this addition of gaming disorder going forward? And just a reminder, you would know this if you know me, or even if you watched the first bit of this video, but I am not a health professional, so my opinions are coming from the articles I've read and my own thoughts on the matter as someone who plays games very often. So what is the International Classification of Diseases? Well, obviously this is put out by the World Health Organization, a body of the United Nations, and the purpose of the International Classification of Diseases is a universal reference point, so somebody in Africa can be diagnosed with the same thing as somebody in the United States, and doctors in both areas can reference this list and give their patient the proper diagnoses based on research from all around the globe. And I believe it is legislated into certain countries at different paces. So I don't know about other countries because I only read about the United States, but ICD-10 came out in 1993. So these things aren't updated very often, and the United States didn't legislate ICD-10 into official use within our country until 2015. So if you're doing the math at home, that's 22 years after ICD-10 was officially put into the World Health Organization's website saying, all right, we've revised this, we've gone through a voting process, this is going to be ICD-10 in 1993. And then in 2015, the United States is like, all right, we're cool with ICD-10. And ICD-11 is in I guess a beta phase, and it won't be revised again until 2019, and then it will be officially voted on in 2022, or maybe it'll be voted on in 2019. Regardless, it's not going to go into effect for a while, and then it won't go into effect in the United States for, let's just safely assume, 20 years after that. We're talking about something that is happening in the future, in the ways away future, not even the near future. And that brings me to one of my points about why I think that adding gaming disorder to this list could be a good thing. And it's also one of my negatives, honestly. They're kind of in tandem. we don't know. I'll say the negative first, I guess. I feel like the data cannot be conclusive on this. We do not know enough about the brain health. Again, I am not a scientist. I am not a health professional, so maybe I'm just talking some bullshit into a microphone, as I always do. But there can be no such data, I'm believing, that will conclusively state that gaming disorders should be added to this list. It's almost like they're doing it because they know that the data will be ready by the time most countries implement this. But at this time, I am skeptical as to what the data could be. I would love if the World Health Organization could release some examples of this data. Maybe they have, and I'm just not finding it on the internet. I mean, we see articles from time to time, very clickbaity articles. Articles about gaming in general are somewhat clickbaity because the people that would read those articles probably already have a negative connotation of gaming. You know, most gamers can't read. So the people reading these articles are older people, professionals. And you'll see articles about people playing games for 24 hours and dying, live streaming for 24 hours and dying, and playing League for, more than 24 hours and not eating, doing ridiculous things like that, which is obviously an issue. But I'm curious as to how many people this affects. That's not to say that if it affects a very, very, very small amount of people, it's not still an issue. But the second thing that I am concerned about, maybe I should state my positives first. I'm going right into the negatives. Another positive is if this promotes more brain science, I'm all for it. Brain science is a good thing. Mental disorders need to be socially accepted. They are still completely stigmatized. Obviously, if you're suffering from anxiety and depression in 2018, you're more likely to talk about it and get help with those problems than you would be in 1968. That's not to say there isn't still a stigma around it, and we need to know a lot about the brain. We're still learning and discovering many things about the most important organ in our body, and I'm just skeptical as to where the science is at this point. But if adding gaming disorder to the International Classification of Diseases promotes more brain science in terms of addictions to gaming, and I want to call it an addiction because that's what gambling addiction would be called, sex addiction. I know that's not the official classification, but I think it would be in tandem with those things like gaming, gambling, sex, alcohol, drugs. They're all things that make you feel good and make you want to do more of those things in light of other responsibilities in your life like eating and sleeping. If making these things official on an official health list promoted and used by countries across the globe promotes more science in these areas, I'm fine with it. My great concern, is dumb people. Maybe this is just my echo chamber on Twitter, but it feels like there's already an international negative connotation against video games, particularly for people over the age of, let's say, 40. If you're my age, you're more likely to have no issues with video games, you're more likely to have no issues with homosexual marriage, you're more likely to have no issues with the legalization of marijuana, and as you go up in age, I'm mostly talking about the United States because I don't know enough about other countries to assume what their society thinks, but as you go up in age, you're more likely to find less favorable opinions of these things. Adding gaming to this list is, I just worry it's going to perpetuate that negative connotation of video games when, in fact, they have some positive aspects to them that probably cannot be said for gambling and alcohol and cocaine and sex even. I mean, having too much sex has to be a bad thing. Not that I can ask anyone in my audience about it. You virgins don't know anything about that. I also don't know anything about that. I'm still a virgin. You guys know. I don't have any children. I'm hoping to have sex with my wife sometime in the next 3 years, make it official and stuff, but I'm working my way up there. Regardless, video games can be a very positive force for many things, especially people with disabilities who have trouble learning or socializing. I saw an article a ways back. If I was really professional, I'd link it in the description, about Minecraft being used in schools to teach certain basic elements of engineering to young kids. Things like that you can do with video games that won't necessarily be publicized, although I guess if I read an article about it, it was written about on some news source. That's not the news that is out there most often. There are positive aspects to video games that I think you would be hard-pressed to find in gambling and drugs and alcohol and every other thing that it is classified with. Disorders due to substance use or addictive behaviors is what it is officially classified under in ICD-11. It just feels extremely vague, and I don't want this to perpetuate the already negative opinions that people in legislative bodies have about video games. We have kind of a gun issue in the United States of America, if you pay attention to the news, and Every time there is some type of terrible mass killing, legislators bring up video games. There's always the inevitable legislator that brings up video games. Hell, I posted a video a couple of days ago where our president was musing, as he muses on many random things, about video games potentially having a negative effect on the brains of children, causing them to want to commit mass acts of violence. Again, if the World Health Organization has some data that they would like to share with the general population that we can read through, I'd be really interested in reading it. As someone who's interested in video games and wants to be a parent someday, I'd like to know how much I should be letting my kids play video games. I'm sure there's all types of science with different conclusions one way or another about how it can affect children's brains at certain ages. Again, the more research, the better. But if we're doing this too early, there are negative aspects of this that need to be considered that I don't necessarily think are being considered. I'm hoping there's more specifics added to gaming disorder in a revision of ICD-11 before it is officially voted on. There's a lot of different ways you can play games. There's not as many different ways as you can gamble. Well, there is a lot of ways you can gamble, not as many different ways you can drink alcohol. I mean, it's through the mouth or the anus, and you know, how you can use drugs in pretty specific ways. Gaming is really broad. I'm hoping we can break that down before this officially gets diagnosed by doctors across the globe, because you want to be specific with these things. We don't want the gaming disorder to be used in a negative way to legislate our games and to be used as a distraction from real issues. Anxiety and depression are real issues that are stigmatized and that need to be focused on. If you're a parent of a child with anxiety or depression, they are likely to exhibit signs of gaming disorder, or they could even be diagnosed with gaming disorder. And I don't think, again, not a doctor, but I don't think if I have anxiety, depression, and I'm using my gaming consoles or my PC as an outlet, or I guess kind of a suppressing function to work against my anxiety and depression that overwhelms my life, I don't think taking my consoles away is going to help with that. But that's my thoughts on the matter. I'd like to hear you guys' opinions in the comments section. I find all of this to be extremely interesting, which is why I wanted to make a video about it. I've linked any articles that I read that have influenced my thoughts in some way, and some other random articles in the description. If you'd like to read about this topic yourselves, we are moving quickly in the areas of science for the brain. I'd like to move much quicker so we can eradicate terrible things like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and focus on those things rather than what are video games doing to my stupid scrambled egg brain. Maybe we can do them simultaneously. I'm underestimating humans. My great-great-grandmother was born in a time with no electricity and no cars, and she died just in time for somebody to land on the moon. So who knows what's going to happen in our lifetimes. It's exciting to be alive. 2018 it seems bad when you read Twitter and you put your head in the news all the time. Does that even make sense? But I think it's an all right time to be alive. It's an exciting time for science and a whole bunch of stuff. So I hope you guys are out there feeling good about your world, and I'd love to know your thoughts about this. Let me know in the comment section below. Leave a like. I appreciate it. It helps me out. Thank you so much for watching. And until next time, bye-bye.